Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Orbit Live event. I'm so excited to welcome two excellent fantasy authors, Gwynne and K.S. Villoso. Gwynne is the author of several fantasy books, including the Faithful and the Fallen trilogy and the Of Blood and Bone trilogy. He's begun the brand new Norse-inspired Bloodstorm trilogy, and the first book of this trilogy, The Shadow of the Gods, is out today. K.S. Villoso is the author of the Filipino-inspired Chronicles of the Bitch Queen trilogy. The series began with the Wolf of Yarrow and the Ikisar Falcon, which released last year. The final epic conclusion to the trilogy, The Dragon of Jinsayang, is out today. Links to buy John and Kay's books can be found by clicking the green button below the video. Throughout the event, John and Kay will be answering your questions. You can submit any questions you have by clicking the Ask a Question link below the video. We already have some questions. Feel free to ask more. You can also vote on your fellow attendees' questions so that the questions with the most votes are likely answered first. The event is being recorded, and you'll be able to access the replay using the same Crowdcast link you used to enter the event. And now, without further ado, I'll turn the event over to John and Kay. Take it away.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys. Hi, Kay.
Hi, John.
So congrats on your publication day.
Congrats to you too.
Thank you very much.
I have your first book here right beside me.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, there's a surprise. Look what I've got.
Oh,
cool. Excellent. So, Kay, how does it feel? Because today, your book, The Dragon of Ginseng, is book 3 in your trilogy, isn't it? It's the last book in the series, I believe. So I was wondering how you felt about wrapping up a series. What are the emotions you're going through right now?
I think I went through most of them last year already when I when I was finishing that third book. And it feels kind of strange because this is like one of the most personal series that I've ever written, and it got really intense. I got to a point where I was like, every draft I did, I was like crying. So, yeah, I think I went through all of them. It just feels like a weight off my shoulders in a way.
Sure.
What does it feel like with you starting a new series after 2 others?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, like you're saying, publishing is a strange business, isn't it? Because, we've written our books and handed them in a year ago. I know the editing and that process goes on for a while, but so to see it published now, there's been a year since I wrote it. But it was quite a strange feeling because my 2 previous series were both set in the same world called the Banished Lands. So I've spent best part of 18 years writing in that world. I haven't been published for 18 years, but I was working on the series long before I was published. So yeah, probably around 18 years writing in that world. So it was I was a little bit nervous really stepping out of that world into something new, but at the same time I was really excited about it because I just felt like I was really ready to dip into something new and fresh and try something different, So hopefully it's come out all right. I enjoyed writing it, that's for sure.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a question here for you, and it's something I've actually wanted to discuss with you for a while now.
Okay.
And I've heard from people say that anti-heroes are like the in thing in traditional publishing, and that generally good heroes are a harder sell. But the past few years, I've seen people use your work as an example against that. I believe the term they use is noble bright. So can you talk a bit about your decisions in heroes and how you think they fit in a genre that embraces gritty, edgy anti-heroes?
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, for right or wrong, when I wrote my first series, The Faithful and the Fallen, I really didn't have much clue about what was popular in publishing or not. My mantra from the beginning was just kind of write what you want to read. So I wanted to write something that captured that nostalgia that I felt, that love I felt for the books I'd grown up loving, Tolkien and Gemmell, Bernard Cornwell's kind of his historical stuff. And so that's really where I started. And I mean, I've heard that said a lot, that grimdark is kind of the cutting edge. But I think fantasy, rather than the moving in a direction, I think it's growing. It's like expanding in direction. So I think there's a lot of room for all the subgenres if you can do them in a way that feels a bit contemporary and fresh. I think what people got fed up with that kind of heroic type of fantasy was that it just felt a bit too black and white. And I think what's for me anyway, and I can only ever kind of talk about the experience from my perspective, and what works for me may not work for someone else. But for me, it feels like if you can make your characters feel authentic and real, rather than two-dimensional kind of mustache twirling bad guys, then I think that's kind of where writing's at the moment. That's this kind of stuff that I strive to write, where the characters, even the good guys, the bad guys, and everyone in between, when you read them, I hope that you can understand their motivations and the reasons that they're making the choices they do. They're not just being bad for the sake of being bad. They've got kind of a back history, and they've got a psychology, and there's a rationale behind the choices they make and the paths they go down. And I think for me, that's what I look for in a book, to see that kind of authentic characterization, even if it's in a fantastical world where you've got dragons and monsters and all the rest of it. So I think that's the key for me, that if you can keep your characters authentic, then it doesn't have to be grimdark and anti-heroes. Although if that's your thing, then that's great, and I love reading stuff like that as well. But that's what I set out to write. So, and that's just how it came out.
And I think people actually say that they're pleasantly surprised by your books, because it gets like the authenticity is there.
Well, that's nice to hear, Kay. I'm pleased to hear that. So I've heard a lot about your world building as well, that it's really unique and got a great flavour. So I wanted to ask you where you kind of got the inspiration for your world building for your Bitch Queen trilogy.
A lot of my world building is like, I kind of think of the world as a character by itself. Like, so I draw a lot from Filipino culture, and the world itself has problems that in Filipino culture I wanted to explore, and I kind of use the world to bring that out, to bring in a way. I don't like the word grimdark used for my books as well, because it's like I want to bring out the best in people, and I tend to pick characters who are not at their best.
Right.
So they're kind of a mess, but my approach is that I kind of want to see them grow, and I want to see them, fulfill, like grow as a person. Not necessarily like good or bad, but hopefully make the right decision. So like a lot of my world is designed to bring out the best and the worst in my characters, and then to hopefully see them make the right choices. And if they don't make the right choices, then see the consequences that come from that.
Okay, cool. I read a review actually by Petrick from Petrick Leo, who's one of my favorite reviewers, and I noticed that he was saying he described your books as character driven. So that kind of really goes along with what I'm hearing you say right now. Sounds great.
Thanks. My other question for you is, so jumping from the last question, how do you contrast like likable characters with a hallmark violence and grimness of this genre?
Yeah, I mean that's it's funny, isn't it, getting these questions on how you write. I never really think too hard about that. A lot of what I write is a gut feeling. But I guess, you know, I grew up, a lot of the influences that I've had aren't just books, they've been films. You know, I grew up watching films with my mum and dad, and the classics like, you know, Spartacus and westerns and all that kind of thing. And it seemed like everything that I remember from those days was based around some kind of conflict. You know, there was always some kind of conflict in what I was watching, what I'm reading, and you know, conflict's bloody. It's nasty. I can remember very clearly watching the film Braveheart. You know, the William Wallace, Mel Gibson movie back in when it came out in the cinema, 95 or something like that. And that had that kind of stuck with me on how, and when I started writing, I remember thinking that influenced how I approach writing conflict and combat, because it was the first time I'd seen something that took all the glory out of combat, and it showed it was a far more realistic interpretation of war and combat, and it felt like it was almost like you were in the scene. You know, it was almost like the characters had a GoPro on or something, and you had this kind of kaleidoscopic melee of horrible chaos, and that's where I get the influence for writing conflict and combat and unpleasant situations. But I think that people are people, you know, so if you're trying to write in a world that feels historically authentic, which is one of the things that I try to do, then if you look at history, you know, it's a history of war, conflict. You know, that is the history of our world, and so I think it's a natural thing to have in there. But it doesn't mean that everyone is a cold-blooded, cold-hearted killer. You know, and so that's how I approach it. You know, they're just people ensnared in very unpleasant situations, whether it's fighting other people or trying to avoid being eaten by a dragon, you know.
That's actually one of the things I find unrealistic about some Grimdark, is that the idea that human nature is inherently like we're always just out for each other, like out for ourselves, and like people are just out to get you. I mean, there's some truth to that, but like I grew up in the Philippines in the slums actually, and you can't survive if you don't cooperate. You can't survive if you're not relying on other people and relying on their inherent goodness. And that's the part that like when I write, I really want to bring that out, where even if things are tough, there are always good people. It's not just like bad people.
I'm really happy to hear you say that, Kay. Yeah, I mean, I feel the same, and I think we all, wherever we are, you know, for me, the things that are important in life are family and friends, you know, and friendship, and I think that's a universal thing. So you're right. You know, you don't have to be writing about characters that are just scheming to rule the world. You know, you can have a balance. I think it's about balance. You know, you can have characters like that, but I think if you've got some kind of balance going on, then it makes it feel a bit more authentic, and that's what I want to write about.
Same here. Yeah. Do you want to start looking at the questions, because I think we have a few of them gathering up now?
Yeah, sure, cool. Okay, so I'm a bit of a dinosaur with this. Let's have a look and see if I can actually understand what's going on.
You just click on ask a question there.
Okay, so I can see the first one I can see is for you, Kay. It's from Sasha Winslow. Do you create music lists when you're writing?
I do, actually. I have for every series I'm writing, I have a whole playlist, and it's just music that helps me get in the mood for that particular series. It's a mix of it's not just epic music. It's usually actually a lot of love songs. Sad love songs.
Excellent. That's the tone you're after, is it?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, it's like it makes you sad, and then you're writing, and then it gets you angry because something's happening in the thing. It's like it's ruining the music.
Brilliant.
So here's the top question that I'm seeing right now. This question is for both John and Kay. If you could have your series adapted to screen, would you prefer a Netflix series or a movie? And who would you ideally cast for your main characters?
Do you want to go with that one first, Kay?
I would prefer a Netflix series. I don't think a movie is gonna be able to encapture like all the subplots and stuff happening. It would be a terrible movie, I think, if we make it into a movie. So yeah, the Netflix series is probably the one going for it. Like, as for casting, that's gonna be tricky because a lot of the cast that I have in mind are Filipino actors, so they're not well known in the West. But like, it would be a great time to see new talent come out.
Yeah, brilliant. That's cool. For me, is that a question from Nils? Okay, cool. Hi, Nils. So, honestly, film or Netflix, I don't mind. I'd love to see either. That'd make my day. If it was films, I'd like it I'd like to see it split into a film, a book, so you've got some room. But Netflix would also be awesome. I'd love to see something on the screen of anything of mine. That would be another dream come true. Casting. So in my first series, there's a character called Gwynne, who's kind of quite popular with my readers, and I've always envisioned him as Mads Mikkelsen. The Le Chiffre from James Bond, and he was in a film called Valhalla Rising, where he plays a Viking kind of pit fighter, and that's how I've always imagined Gwynne. So he would be my ideal guy for him. And in my new series, The Shadow of the Gods, there's a dragon who can shapeshift. And I kind of imagined her as Cate Blanchett.
That would be perfect.
Yeah, I think she'd be a good dragon. Yeah, yeah. That's about as far as I've got with the casting. But thanks for the question, Nils. Okay, what else have we got here then? Playlists. Someone's asked. Nora. So I listen to playlists a lot when I'm writing. I try to pick stuff that's kind of evocative of whatever I'm reading. So for my latest series, which is very heavily Norse inspired, so Norse mythology and Viking era history, I've been listening to almost nothing else. I've been listening to Scandinavian folk music, so bands like Wardruna and Danheim, and just have them on loop. Heilung as well. They're really great for me. They work for me to help me get in the zone and into that kind of writing area, and just evoke an atmosphere that I find helps me to get writing. For the first series, I've listened to a lot of soundtracks, Lord of the Rings, Gladiator, Last of the Mohicans. Another one that I always used to love was the soundtrack to Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola's film version. I love the soundtrack to that. It's really atmospheric. So yeah, thanks Nora. That's the kind of playlists I listen to. So Julia thinks that The Bitch Queen would be better as a HBO series. There you go. There you go, Kate.
Okay. There's this question here that I kind of find interesting from Julia. For both authors, are there times when you have to stop yourself from ruining a character's life even more because they've already had to deal with so much already? You want to answer that first?
I'm really sorry. I'm just looking at the questions. I didn't hear that. Could you say that again, Kay? Sorry.
For both authors, are there times when you have to stop yourself from ruining a character's life even more because they've already had to deal with so much already?
Short answer is no. No. We make characters up to go through some unpleasant times, and so these are dangerous, unpleasant worlds they live in. So you just have to expect bad things to be happening to them, I'm afraid. I mean, in saying that, I did, when I finished my first series, I did want to leave, even though I was writing a new series set in the same world. I didn't want to go back to the original cast because I kind of felt sorry for them. That they the ones that survived to the end, I thought they've been through a lot, and so to write a new series and bring them back in, and inevitably some of them will end up dying. I thought, no, let's just give them their happy ending. And so I wrote the second series with it. There was a period of time, that 130 years between it. So I brought in a new cast of characters to torment instead. How about you, Kay? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no. If I can see a way to ruin their life, I will ruin their life. Like it's not even I actively look for ways to ruin their life. They're gonna kill. If they ever come to life, they're gonna kill me.
Yeah, let's hope they don't. Then they'll hunt you down. Okay, I'm just scrolling through this list of questions. When will Shadow of the Gods come out in audio in Canada? So yeah, it should be out today. I think there is some. I've had an email from my editor at Orbit US, and I don't know. There's some kind of glitch, but it's supposed to be out today in North America. So yeah, I'm really sorry about that for those people that haven't been able to get hold of it today, but it should be coming very soon. Hopefully, those issues are just technical. It's all done, ready to go. So yes, as soon as possible. Hopefully, it'll be sorted today or tomorrow, so people can get the audio of that. There's another. Sorry, Kay. There's a question. It's not a question. It's a statement from Evan Lord about my two youngest sons, the brothers Gwynne. So that's Ed and Will, and they've got their BookTube channel, and this guy says that they are goats, and if I'm with it, then I think that means greatest of all time, but not actually goats.
Oh, I see it now.
Yeah.
So you want to pick another question from the Ask a Question bar, or? You want to pick, or?
I'm just scrolling down them, Kay. You're probably better doing this because I think I'm being a dinosaur. Okay, here we go. So, Kay, what does your daily writing routine look like? That's from Nicholas Hanfield Jones.
My daily writing routine is waking up, getting breakfast, and depends on if the kids are awake or not, then taking care of their breakfast as well, because my kids are homeschooled, so they're at home with me. So once like all of those daily routines are out of the way, then like I take my coffee to my computer and try to stumble through as many words as I can until lunch, with constant interruption from my kids.
Yeah, I bet that's fun. I mean, that's fantastic. You're homeschooling, but that must put some time restraints on you. You just cope with that, okay?
Yeah, it's okay. They're pretty old now, so they do their own thing in their computers. They get they get their work done every day, and then I just check to make sure that they're doing it, and they're really good with it. So
great,
they're good kids.
Brilliant. That always helps.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me, so my daughter Harriet's profoundly disabled. So my wife and I, we're at home. We're her carers. So, and that's been the situation, for a long time. So, my writing of our day kind of revolves around Harriet because she she needs a lot of care. So she everything, feeding, dressing, cleaning, entertaining. She likes to be entertained a lot as well. Harry can be quite demanding, in a good way. But she likes the attention. She loves being sung to and having stories read to her and all of that. So my day, my routine, it really just slots in around Harriet. My wife and I, we both take care of that, and then I squeeze in writing as and when I can. A lot of my writing's done at night, or kind of in between sessions, so in between breakfast and lunch, in between lunch and dinner. And obviously, it's not just Harry at home. I've got my two younger sons are at home as well. My oldest son's left home now, so. And even though they're grown up, I mean, they're a lot of fun, and they're very demanding boys.
They're probably watching, aren't they?
It might be, yeah. So if you see something hit me in the head in the screen, then you know they've read that. They'll come and throw things at me.
Oh, Julia is surprised that writers eat breakfast. I don't always, but I gotta have coffee.
Yeah. I start the day with a cup of coffee and just sit down and try and catch up with social media that's gone on for about half an hour and ease myself into the day that way. Coffee's an essential part of life.
I've done it, I've tried not doing coffee for a few days, and it my I become incoherent. I start doing things that I'm like, I wouldn't have done that with coffee.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pick another question.
Sure.
This is from Travis. Dragons, how great are they, and how do you approach writing them?
Okay, for me, I've had two types of dragons. In my first series, I had dragons that I call Drags, and they were inspired by everything. Basically, everything in the Banished Lands is nasty creatures made bigger. So my dragons in the Banished Lands were based on Komodo dragons, but bigger. It's like Komodo dragons on steroids with anger issues. That's how I approached my dragons in the first series. And in the series I'm writing now, which is the one with the dragon on the cover, that's very much I just took all my inspiration from Norse mythology. So actually, I've had a few kind of separate starting points or inspirations for the dragon in the series, but one of them was there's a book called the Prose Edda, which is a collection of poetry from kind of early medieval Scandinavian period, and it's all about Norse mythology. And there's one of the books in it's called the Völuspá, which is about a seeress or a witch who is prophesying to Odin about the end of days. So a lot of it is taken up with that last battle, with Ragnarok, where Odin faces off against Fenrir, and Thor's up against Jormungandr, and all the gods are there. Everyone in the kind of Norse pantheon is there, and they all kill each other. Basically, they all wipe each other out. So there were very few survivors. But when I was reading that poem in the Völuspá, literally one of the last paragraphs talks about this dragon rising up out of the Darker Moon Hills, and this dragon has escaped his jail from in the chambers beneath Yggdrasil, the World Tree, and this, and it talks about Nithhogger is the dragon's name. He rises up from the ashes, spreads his wings, and flies across the sunset, and there are corpses hanging from his wings. And when I read that, I thought, that's cool. And then I thought, what happens next? So that was one of the big inspirations for the kind of the starting point for this series. And my dragon is very much inspired by Nithhogger. So I've just ripped off Norse mythology for how I've seen this dragon. That's the inspiration and starting place anyway. So two very different types of dragons for me. But you've got a dragon in your title, Kay. So yeah. Tell me about that dragon.
The dragons in my book are more magical. There's magic in the land, and that kind of approach to dragons, where the only way they can exist at all is that they must be drawing on the magic somehow, and basically their existence is more like, I'm more concerned with the people and what they do, like the dragons being like a symbol of power. If they can control it, then they can control people. So I then started making it almost like evil throughout the series, where because in Filipino mythology, it's hard to pin down Filipino mythology because it's archipelago, and there's different mythologies for like every town, and so it's basically it's all over the place. But the one thing that is in common is that a lot of the mythologies revolves around monsters, like very like shapeshifters almost, who just want to eat people or take their skin, or something to that effect. So I wanted to use that terror of the monsters, of something that wants to wear your skin, like that sinister feeling, and then use it to something that's more acceptable in Western fantasy, so dragons. So it's hard to talk about it without spoiling, but yeah, the dragon Aswang is the thing that comes out in the series.
Sounds cool. I like that. Wicked. Okay, looking at another question then. From T.O. Monroe. Are you a plotter, architect, or a pantster gardener in your planning out of your books? A gardener or an architect? Okay.
I'm both. So I will create this elaborate outline saying that, okay, this is what's gonna happen. Then when I start writing, I throw it out. So it's like I have an idea of how the story will be, but while I'm writing, I follow my instincts, and my instincts could be like, they could just not agree with the outline at all, which means sometimes I'll just push through and finish that book. Then I'll go back, and then I'll try to make it look like I know what I was doing.
That's the art of writing.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'm pretty much exactly the same. I find myself right in the middle of kind of gardener and architect. I always start off with a rough plot, but I try and get the characters clear in my head. But I often start off with a series of events for the book and the series. So it's and then I'll have I'll try and come up with characters who are best placed to kind of tell those events or see those events, and that's my starting position. But once you start writing, I don't know how the characters are going to get from one event to the next. That's kind of that's the gardener part where and they may end up going in different directions or doing different things. It's that's all part of the fun and the stress of writing, I suppose, hoping that it works out coherently. But yeah, I think like a series of events, I always feel happy when I've got those events to kind of frame the story around. Usually my characters I build around thinking about those events and who would be an interesting point of view to see these events through. The exception for that was a character in my latest series, a lady called Orca, and she was kind of right there at the beginning as well. I remember I wanted to, because I like playing with tropes. I mean, some people think tropes are a swear word, but I like the tropes in writing. I think they're there for a reason. It's because so many of us can relate to them. But I think that if you can take a trope and write it with a fresh twist, or just make it feel contemporary, or sometimes subvert it, that's a lot of fun as well. So I started the trope Orca with the trope of the retired person of violence, someone who's had possibly a military or violent past, who's kind of settled down and tried to put that behind them, and that's where she started. And I could see her quite clearly from the beginning, but usually it takes me a little longer to get into the head of the characters, and I start with the events.
Okay.
So yeah, there you go, T.O. Monroe. Thanks for the question.
I want to answer this fun one by Travis again.
Okay.
Would you rather fight a wolf-sized dragon or a dragon-sized wolf, and why?
Shall I go first on that one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd go for the smaller guy. The wolf-sized dragon, please. Because it depends. Size matters when it comes to dragons and wolves, I think. So I find it much easier to stand against a wolf-sized dragon with a Dane axe or something like that than a dragon the size of the one on my cover, or a wolf the size of the dragon on my cover.
You're gonna go straight to fighting this thing.
Yeah. I'm not going to offer it treats or anything.
Yeah. I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna pick the dragon-sized wolf, just because I think that I stand a better chance with an animal whose facial expression I can read, because I'm really used to dogs. I used to have this really big shepherd who his head came up to my waist, and he was huge. He was like 95 pounds of pure muscle. So
wow.
That probably gives me a bit of an advantage with a dragon-sized wolf, because I will probably offer it treats.
As long as you're not
like the smaller dragon, we have a bearded dragon as a pet, and I can't read this creature at all. I don't know what it's thinking. And it's fast. It moves like it has a brain. So you give it a cricket, it'll stalk it, but I can't guess what's in its mind. So that kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I get that. That's a great answer. I like that. Okay, so another question from Travis. What book has had the most influence on your career as a writer? What do you think, Kay?
That's so hard to answer, because it's there's no one book. But my base answer for this is always Earthsea, because Earthsea was the book that I read, and I realized like I could write fantasy from a brown person's perspective, which is like that was really unique to me at the time, because almost every other fantasy I've read at that point didn't have like settings or characters that I felt were similar to me. And like Earthsea was, about this mage who lived in an archipelago, and I really felt at home there. So that's always my answer, because like there were other books I've been reading, and I think other books that have influenced me in prose and everything, but Earthsea was the fantasy book that stood out to me, where it's like you can do this too.
Yeah, they're wicked. Yeah, okay, cool. I mean, for me, I can't narrow it down to one. I always say three, and it's not so much three books as three writers, but it's Tolkien started the whole thing for me, really, that kind of love of all things epic. And then David Gemmell came along. I remember reading him. He was the first guy whose book I read back, and this is back in the 80s, where I had to stay up all night to finish the book. That feeling of just having to know one more page, one more chapter, and I'd never really been gripped in that way to have to stay up half the night to finish. So, and I loved his flawed characters. Most of what I'd read had been very much knights in shining armor and George and the Dragon and that kind of heroic fantasy. So Gemmell really brought a new flavor to fantasy for me, which I loved. And then I'd say Bernard Cornwell as well, even though he's by and large a historical novelist. His series on King Arthur, the Warlord Chronicles, is one of my all-time favorite series. Now I've read it, I don't know how many times, but every time I read it, I weep, because I just think it's so beautifully characterized, but it also feels so historically authentic, yet it's kind of magical, a bit otherworldly. So those are the three writers that really I aspire to combine, epic and Tolkien and his epicness, Gemmell and his flawed characters, and Cornwell and his kind of historical authenticity. Yeah,
those are great.
my heroes. Yeah. Okay, question here, Kay, from Nicholas. I bitch for both of us. When writing, what do you struggle with? Dialogue, characterization, pacing?
Oh, I would say it depends on the book. It depends on the book, because it depends. Like when you're writing character-driven stuff, it depends on the characters, like whose characters head you're in, and like there's some characters that they can have dialogue like really easily. They're smooth talkers, they're charming, and then I have this one character who it's not in the Bitch Queen series, but one that I've written about in the past, and she's like so wooden that the dialogue is a little bit harder. Like trying to find interesting dialogue is a little harder. So it totally depends. Like if this so in Bitch Queen, the Queen Talion is rather easy when it comes to like action and dialogue, because she's witty, she's snarky, and then she's her first problem solving thing is like to bring out her sword and start stabbing people. Okay. So if you have a character who's more reserved and they're actually logical, in a way it's almost boring. So you're gonna struggle with pacing this character. So yeah, it to me it's totally dependent on whose head I'm in.
Sure, yeah. I mean, characters, dialogue, pacing. I think because I've always written multi-point of view stories, pacing is always something that I'm mindful of, and I think it's one of the areas that can can be more of a challenge because you're moving, multiple characters forward at the same time, and so it is a challenge to keep those for each character's story, keeping each one, moving forward and interesting and not slowing down. So that's always a challenge. I think that they're all a challenge. Dialogue, characterization, pacing. You're always just striving to do the best you can with it, and never. I'm speaking for myself, but never really quite sure how it's coming out. Just hoping it's coming out all right. But and that's one of the reasons why I have kind of those events which I mentioned earlier as my kind of anchor points, because whenever I start to get bogged down and think, what am I doing here? I keep moving towards the next event, and that helps me to get back on track, and hopefully helps me, especially with the pacing. Yeah.
The doggy's asking for attention.
Oh, I saw the cat earlier. The dog's there now. Brilliant. Who is this? I love dogs.
This is Hudson.
Hey, Hudson.
He's a corgi.
That's good. My wife's mad on corgis. She'd like a corgi. We've got fox terriers at the moment. And he's got
great.
A voice.
Yeah. I don't know why he's doing this. He never normally does this. He doesn't like me talking to myself.
Yeah. You worry again.
Okay. Let's pick this top one.
Sure.
For both John and Kay, do you have a favorite character perspective to write? Are there any characters that you struggle with more than others to write?
Do you want me to go first on that one? Okay, so it depends on the character, really. So talking about my new series, like I mentioned a little earlier, Orca I found probably easier to write because I saw her very clearly right from the beginning. So I just felt like I knew her better, and it does take a while to kind of, for me, to get to know your characters properly and to try and make their voice unique and so on. But so she's probably the easiest character I've found to write, and the hardest is probably a character in book 2 of the new series. I've just finished book 2 about a month ago now, and submitted it to my agent Julie. But there's a character in there, and really I wrote that character because I could see an event at the end of the book that I wanted, and I wanted to see through a point of view, and it didn't fit with any of the characters that I'd already written. So I came up. So I've introduced a new character, and really started with introducing that character just because I wanted their pair of eyes to see this event at the end of the book. So I came up with their thread kind of bit by bit through the book. Hopefully they've come out all right now. They felt like they came out fairly strong. My boys liked it. They're test readers. So, but that felt like I was, walking through a swamp. It's just taking one step, testing the ground, then taking another step and just moving forward. And it was quite a challenge to write their thread, even though it was a lot of fun and I enjoyed it. And hopefully, fingers crossed, they've come out all right in the end. But so, that's the probably the most challenging character I've written.
He agrees.
Thanks, Hudson. Okay. How about you, Kay?
So I have the one point of view in Bitch Queen, and she is both the most challenging and the easiest I've ever written about. And mostly like her thoughts just started flowing when I started writing her story.
Yeah.
Probably because like the plot is so like it's so interwoven with her character. I want to take him outside, but he's gonna start barking even more.
Yeah.
And then the other dog's gonna start barking.
I think he's great. I think Hudson wants to answer your question for you, though.
Yeah. You want to answer my question, bud? But yeah, like Italian is both the easiest and the hardest I've ever written, and it's just by design. Like the plot is so interwoven with her thoughts and her characterization that like it was a challenge.
Sure. Okay, let's go to the next question then, Kay. So the next one I can see is from Nora, and this is for you, Kay. She says, poor Tali goes through a lot throughout Wolf of Orenyaro and the Ikusar Falcon. Was it difficult to write all the scenes? And what do I need to be prepared to read book 3? Tissues, chocolate, a shoulder to cry on.
You're gonna need all three. A lot of the scenes were really difficult to write. And some of them they required like me writing out the events and then going back and then filling in her thoughts, because they, like I said, they're just so like interwoven with the way she feels and she thinks. It's not like with my other books where it's more like you could take a step back. With this one in particular, I really had to get into her mindset because it formed part of the design, like the almost like the con trick, where there's a few twists and you'll miss them if you blink, you'll miss them, but there's some hints that she gives out through her perspective, but you're not gonna know that it's a thing until later on. So it's kind of it was very challenging to write the scenes where the reader will feel what they're supposed to feel in order for the twist later on to work. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, she's gonna need all three.
Okay. There you go. Be prepared. To both. From Nora again, what is the first idea when you start a book? A world, a character, a theme? So I think I've probably kind of answered that a little bit with talking about events usually in a character. But how about you, Kay? What's your starting point?
Almost all the time it's character, but it's not so much a character in a bubble, but a character who has to deal with a certain thing. So it's not like I may not even have their characteristics or their personality down yet, but it's more of the character has a problem, and there's a problem they have to solve using their very specific personality, which is probably going to be a hindrance to the plot because they're so messed up. and then from there I move further in, and then I create a theme, and then the world maybe comes later on. Sometimes I set it in the world of Orenyaro, which is same with you. I've been working on this world for a couple of decades now, so it's like it's my default because it's already established. But sure. I'm working on a few drafts in new worlds, and I just kind of fashion the world around what's most convenient to get the story out there.
Okay, cool. Back to the questions.
Yeah. This is for you, for John. What has been your best moment as an author and your best moment in the Faithful and the Fallen series?
Okay, I mean, I think for most authors, there's a series of best moments. Finishing your first book is always something that's pretty major. Getting an agent was a big moment for me. Getting that phone call to say I'd been offered a publishing deal was just mind-blowing, so surreal. And the other one was Malice, when Malice won the David Gemmell Morningstar Award for Best Fantasy Debut of 2012. And that was just crazy, because I've already mentioned David Gemmell as being one of my heroes. So to end up with my debut winning an award with his name on it was just, I was smiling for probably a year after that. That was great. Yeah, it was an amazing moment, and it's lovely to be there with all my family as well. So it's a really special moment. Also, that moment sticks in my mind because it's my claim to fame, really. Joe Abercrombie, who is one of my favourite writers today, he was there as well. I think he was up in he was nominated in the shortlist for the Legend Award, which was for Best Fantasy Novel of the Year. And I remember we were chatting afterwards, and he called me a bastard, which I was very, very proud to receive that from him. I think I actually said thank you. So yeah, that was definitely a high point. Oh, I think the second part of that question was favorite moment in The Faithful and the Fallen. I mean, there is I don't want to give too many spoilers away. And writing the last book 4, Wrath, was kind of a bittersweet time because it was this series I'd had in my head for so many years. So to be writing those last scenes for all those characters was quite a special moment. But I also remember when I think of the series, one of the first things I think of is writing a scene in the third book, Ruin, where I won't give too much away, but it involves a duel, a giant wolf, and a running mount on horseback. So I won't give too much away. But if anyone's read that, then they probably know hopefully know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Can't wait to get to those parts. I'm just starting the first book, so.
Well, I hope you enjoy it, Kelly.
I think the talking headset says we have about 4 minutes left. We have time for one or two more questions.
Okay, that's gone quick.
Yeah.
Do you want to pick one, Kate?
Sure. This one caught my eye. What do you like most about writing? Do you want to venture into other genres?
Do you want to answer that one first?
Sure. I love exploration the most. That's the part that I love about fantasy. It's going into the unknown and just having the chance to create things that you want to explore. Like, say, you want to go into a castle. You want to go into a mysterious castle, and then there's like dragons flying around it, and this castle is in the sky. Like that's that, and then getting there, like the exploration. I love it. Like, outside of writing, my other hobby is backpacking, like going to the mountains and overnight hiking, and it gives me that same sense of wonder of like, I've never been here before, but I'm looking at an epic landscape kind of thing. So that's the part that I always love about fantasy. But having said that, if I was gonna write in another genre, it would be horror, because it also has the same, like maybe in a more or less epic scale, but the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
There's that same what do you call it? Like that same tinge that. So yeah, I would go into horror definitely.
Okay.
How about you?
Okay, I mean, the thing I love about writing is well, I try to do what I love to experience, and what I love about reading is to feel, to feel those emotions, to be swept away and feel for the characters, to love them, to hate them, to care about them. And once I'm invested in characters I'm reading, then everything clicks into place for me. I care about everything that's going on, and I've cried when I've read books. I've laughed. I've punched the air. And that's what I strive to do. That's what I want to capture, is that sense of just swept up and enraptured in a tale where you're feeling the emotions alongside the characters. That's always my goal. It's kind of the holy grail, is to write characters in situations where the reader will feel, will just feel like they're there alongside with them. So that's and I love storytelling. You know, I love trying to tell stories that are engaging in that way, that that carry you along. So yeah, and talking about other genres, I mean, the natural one for me, if I ever actually have the time, which I'm terrible at, and can get my books in on a deadline and have some spare time, I would have a go at historical novels. You know, I kind of, with my reading, and unfortunately one of the ironies that I find with writing is you get less time to read for pleasure these days. You know, a lot of but when I do read for pleasure, I straddle that fence between fantasy and historical novels. You know, I love them both, and so if I had the time, I'd love to have a go at a historical novel. You know, I think that'd be fun. But it's my poor timekeeping is my enemy.
Someday.
Yeah, exactly. Someday.
I think we're out of time.
Okay. We can't squeeze another one in. We.
Yeah. The Orbit logo is talking to us now. Okay. Thank you for coming, everyone. Okay. This has been great. Thank you so much, John.
Oh no, it's been my pleasure, Kay. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and these questions as well. Once I got the hang of how to actually find the questions on the screen,
it's a pleasure and an honor for me.
Oh, me too. Absolutely, likewise. You know, writing's a insular thing, isn't it? So it's always great to speak to someone else and kind of get an understanding of how you go about your craft. So I found that really enjoyable and interesting. Thanks, Kay.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to all you guys with your questions. Great, a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
Thanks all.
Okay.